Hello and welcome to what I intend to be a series of videos about a car I bought last year. It's a brown Spitfire with a GT6 bonnet and engine in it, and I bought it from a chap called Roland who lives in South London after it was advertised in a classified section of the Club Triumph website. I went down and had a look at it, and it basically hadn't really turned a wheel for 20 or so years, possibly more, but it was in reasonable condition. All the rubbers were really quite heavily deteriorated, and you know, it was showing signs of being sat around for a while, but sort of the panel work was pretty good. It had a nice set of Wolf Race alloys on it, so I made him an offer. He very kindly considered quite a cheeky low offer and accepted it. So I went back a couple of weeks later with a man and a van who dragged it home for me and dropped it off outside where I keep my cars, outside my garage block. So the brakes were seized, so I had to jack it up on the street. I couldn't roll it because the brakes were totally seized on, and remove the calipers, or actually remove the brake pads from one side and slackened off the rear drums and whatnot. Anyway, rolled it in, put it away next door to my existing Mark III Spitfire, and I had a bit of a poke around, looked at it. The interior is a real bit of a mix. It's mostly Mark II Spitfire, and then it's got some serious homemade wiring modifications which are going to take a little while for me to sort out. Once I've got a bit of time to work on the car, I changed the oil and the oil filter and got some fresh petrol in a can to run it off and just basically see if it would go. And it did. Bit smoky. Yeah, a bit smoky. Yes. So yeah. Well, it's running. That behaviour was pretty typical for a long time, so I would sort of start it up every now and then and try and get it to run, and it would race for a while and then it would conk out just as it did, then just stop. And I thought, well, it sounds like, to me it felt like a fueling problem, but the first thing I did was change the HT leads and plugs, see if that made any difference, and it didn't. I suspected the fuel pump, but it turned out that the pump was working okay, but there was a blockage in the line from the tank to the fuel pump. So took the tank out and managed to clear the pipe with sort of carb cleaner and air pressure, and then the carburetors also, I took them off, gave them a real good clean, because they were sort of the pistons were dropping unevenly, so you know one was rising more slowly than the other, and then the other one was getting stuck. So cleaned them up real thoroughly, put them back together, and was fairly happy, more or less, and stuck them back on, and then the car ran pretty well. It didn't conk out anymore. So I drove it around and around my garage, which I didn't video, unfortunately, with no brakes apart from the handbrakes. I still haven't sorted out, put the pads back in and whatnot. In fact, there was a brake servo, which I removed from the line, so you can put your foot on the foot brake and absolutely nothing happens. But drove it around with a handbrake, just around my garage, and great, yeah, and it kept running and no problem. So now the next stage in the project is I'm going to rebuild the calipers and get the discs skimmed, and probably, I don't know if the drums need any attention. I'll have a look at the brake drums and check the lines all the way through. So once the brakes are working spot on, then I can think about what's next. Really, wiring. The wiring, I don't want to get involved, but it's going to have to be done.